Yes, indeed, folks. You're listening to Blue Please here on cynicalbrit.com with myself, Total Biscuit. Now, there has been so many requests for this, so I best start doing it. I know it's a bit of a pain in the ass for me, but whatever. It's good to spread good music. People have been asking that I post my pre-show playlist after each show, and I think that's perfectly reasonable. So I will start putting those in the show notes, and I shall point you, hopefully, in the direction of some exceptionally good music, and sell a few albums for the good people over at the various metal labels that I often play sample tracks from, so that should be good for everybody. There you go. In the meantime, so we've got something to talk about. Funnily enough, I'm basing this entire 15-minute segment on a tiny post on MMO Champion. Very, very small, a couple of sentences, if that, blue post. So I'm going to go down there. In the meantime, if you would like to take part in the chat, and I would strongly suggest that you do, it's very neat, you can head on over. Yes, indeed, head on over to cynicalbrits.com, click the chat button. That's at the bottom of the screen. You can get involved in the video chat. That will be a good idea, in my opinion. Do that, and you will indeed be rejoicing, because you will see the might of B-Drone and some guy in a crazy helmet. It's a little bit worrying, honestly. Seems to be a full-sized metal battle helmet. I'm terrified. What can I say? Thankfully, he's on the internet, and as such, not real. Right, so this MMO Champion thing, there's very little point in linking this because it's bloody tiny. It really is. So, it's a couple of sentences, if that. Quote, this is about the Ruby Sanctum's availability. Due to the fact that we will be delaying the release of patch 3.3.5 in Europe, Korea, and Taiwan in order to ensure the patch process in all regions is as smooth as possible, the Ruby Sanctum will not be immediately available on North American realms upon the release of the patch. Once patch 3.3.5 has been released in North America, and we are confident about a time when we can open up Ruby Sanctum, we will provide an update here on the forums. There you go. That's it. Simple as that. And in those couple of sentences, I have to find an awful lot of hope, honestly, because up until this point, it seems to me that the raiding scene has been regarded, certainly in terms of competitive raiding, as some kind of freaky sideshow. It's not been properly respected by Blizzard. Now, what do I mean by respected exactly? Well, we've already seen the absolute and complete nonsense, and I do mean utter complete nonsense, regarding the various world first kills, all of the bugs surrounding them, and the constant nerfing of content in a way that is garbage. We saw the Insidia debacle, which should have ended up in a far, far more sensible state than it did, and indeed must have done major damage to the morale of Insidia and to an awful lot of hardcore raiders. We've seen double standards from Blizzard, and that is honestly very little other than incredibly upsetting. However, this, on the other hand, in combination with something that I spoke about must have been over a month ago now, at least, does give me some hope. So, what does that mean exactly? Well, by delaying the release of Ruby Sanctum, even after deploying the patch, what you are saying is that the competition for the world first on Ruby Sanctum bosses, and of course we're talking about hard modes here, normal modes have already been beaten on the PTR, so that's irrelevant. We're talking about the hard mode, and that's what's going to be the real race. What they're saying is that is important enough for us to delay the deployment of an instance across an entire regional area, just to ensure that there is a fair set of attempts and an even playing field when we start this little competition off. Now, that's really good, that's positive, and like I said before, there was another instance of there being a nod in the direction of hardcore raiders. This was much, much larger, though. This is what I was saying about it, was the 10 and 25 man split. Now, you might think that it's weird that I think that the split between 10 and 25 man that is coming in Cataclysm, i.e. they're going to be on a shared lockout, is something that I consider to be good for hardcore raiders. But I've explained why before. primarily because hardcore raiders are forced to raid a format that they do not want to raid, whether or not it be 25 mans because that's where the best gear comes from, or 10 mans because they have to do it just to get the extra gear in order to be competitive. Either way, you are in a situation where hardcore raiders are forced to raid something they don't necessarily want to do. If they prefer 25 mans, they have to raid 10 man anyway. If they prefer 10 man, then they have to raid 25 man anyway if they want to get the best gear, they want the legendaries, and they want the big achievements that actually matter. So it's a nasty situation for all hardcore raiders. Really it is, as far as I'm concerned. I don't believe that hardcore raiders want to raid 40 to 50 hours a week at all. We've seen people like Insidia will happily get as casual as humanly possible once they've beaten the content. They're just extremely determined. You're like Paragon, the same deal. All of those big guilds, they work that way. I've said it before, I'll say it again, the best players are the ones that now actually play the least, because they don't have to spend the time grinding their way through the content, they can already beat it. Now, what I also said was that separating the paths in such a way that 25-man raiders cannot unduly pollute the 10-man progression path is important. It shows that Blizzard recognizes that the world first is something that is vital to the health of the raid game. Now, a lot of people might disagree with me on that, and like I give a damn. However, my argument is simply this. It doesn't matter if you are claiming that you are not part of the progression race, because even if you think otherwise, you are. In maybe a very small way, but you are. For example, even if you think, well, I'm just raiding for the sake of fun and enjoyment, happiness and kittens. Yes, I'm raiding for world peace, isn't it awesome? Even if you believe that, there are people in your guild that do not think that way. There are people in your guild that measure. Indeed, the EPs are important. They measure their progress against other people on the realm, and if they're not doing well, then that will actually impact their morale and their willingness to stay in your guild, even if you believe otherwise. It also impacts you directly because of recruiting. If you are not doing well in comparison to the other guilds on your realm, then you are going to have difficulty finding pleasant and well-skilled players to actually fill out your raid group. You are, because you're going up against people who offer better prospects. It's like the employment market, for God's sake. You've got let's just say you've got two employers. One offers more money and more benefits, one offers less, and they're both employing the same kind of person. Who exactly do you think the really skilled dude is going to go for? Let's be totally honest. So, if you don't think that progression matters, then you have to think about all of those outside factors. Yes, there are some people that pursue progression endlessly, with great tenacity. They have a huge investment in being the best that they can be. That is an admirable trait in all walks of life, gaming included. However, that's not everybody. In fact, I'd say that's the minority. Looking at the freaking forums, considering the number of entitled casual babies on there, and indeed in the trade channel, and on your own very realm, I would say they're definitely the minority. Those are not the people that want to be all they can be. They're the guys who want to get as much as they can for bare minimum effort. And they demand it because their subscription says they can have it. That's the kind of person that needs to go to hell, but still, they are measuring. They are measuring their progress based on the gear that they have. And that progress is tied into how well they are doing on the realm. And it doesn't matter if they are, say, number 27th on the realm, or 31st on the realm, or 5th on the realm. That is related to the level of gear that they have access to. So, indirectly, they also care about the progression race on their server, and as such, they are tied into the progression race across the entire world in a very small but significant manner. Again, you also have to bear in mind that even those kind of people cannot raid alone. If they are part of a guild, they need good guildies to carry them. If they want to slack off and get the best gear with bare minimum effort, they need good dudes indeed. Very good guys in order to actually get the gear that they want. And that is tied into the progression, because good players care about progression. It's not the only thing as well. It is important to me, certainly to me and to others, to see examples of exceptional play. These are the guys that push the envelope. Not only is it important for me to see them and say, hey, look at those guys, this is what I can aspire to be in terms of in-game skill and organization and logistics and discipline. Not only is it important in that way, but it's also important because those are the guys that push the envelope and force Blizzard to create content that they are going to be challenged by. And that means that me, who is an inferior player, will later on, after them, benefit from that content. At least that's the general idea. I mean, I've talked about the fact that Blizzard has not done this perfectly in any way. The whole easy and hard mode and no normal and no gradients of difficulty, I've talked about it many, many times. There is no need to repeat it. But it cannot be argued at all that the presence of world-first guilds, those guilds that pursue that ever-elusive goal of being the first guys in the world against all odds to beat this particular boss, it cannot be denied that these guys have a great influence on the content that is produced. The speed that they beat the bosses is important. Indeed. Here's an example just from this very expansion pack. The debacle, indeed the statement that Insidia beat the entirety of Wrath of the Lich King launch content from the start of launch in 3 days, is the revelation that forced them to create perhaps the best instance they've ever put together in the form of Ulduar. Do you really think that instance would have been as good and would have had all of those challenging hard modes and things like that if Insidia had not steamrolled the living hell out of the content at the start of the game? I don't think so. If there was nobody like Insidia, and there were people that were just happy to progress at a leisurely pace through an Naxxramas, and don't get me wrong, whatever pace you want to go through the raid content is absolutely fine, as long as you don't start making demands. Just bear that in mind. It's the people at the cutting edge, it's the people that are actually experiencing all the content that get to demand more content. It's like, I've beaten this, what's next? That's my starter, where's my main course? They shouldn't have to wait for the guys who are incredibly slow, picky eaters to, take 2 hours to eat a damn salad. And those are the guys that push the envelope, and those are the guys that caused hard modes to exist in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong, I mean, the entitled casuals are what caused the existence of easy modes to begin with, so that's a pretty bad thing as well. But bear in mind, if all of the players were those kind of people, if they were all entitled casuals, and if they all didn't want to work for their effort, then we'd have something like frickin' Free Realms, for God's sake. No effort on anything required, no remotely difficult content, but it's okay, you can buy pretty much everything you want. There you go. We'd have some kind of horrible free-to-play MMO with micropayments for all gear. Don't give them ideas, Total Biscuit. Seriously, good God. So recognition of the world first, in that respect, is important for all of the reasons that I've just discussed. The world first is far more important than you may think. The progression race, despite the fact that some of my fellow podcasters disagree with me, is extremely important in pushing content forward and ensuring that Blizzard is constantly trying to up the ante. They fail. Repeatedly. Do they fail more than they succeed, though? No, they don't. There are some bad examples, but Ice Crown is not a bad instance. The Ice Crown 5-man's not bad instances. Ulduar, a superb instance. The original Naxxramas was great. The new one, not so good. I will happily admit that. Sartharian, a really nice set of encounters there. Archivon, not so much. But if you look in the past, look at all of those good instances they put out in the past. Blackwing Lair, great. AQ40, great. Zul'Gurub, Rub, great. Zolaman, great. AQ20, even fairly decent. Had a couple of very interesting bosses in there. And then, of course, look at TBC. Karazhan, masterful. Even Gruul was okay. But then you look at SSC, TK, Black Temple. I'm not going to say Mount Hyjal because it wasn't that great. And then Sunwell. Once again, they succeed more than they fail in terms of their raid content design. And the only reason they continue to try and aspire to that, I mean, just look at where raiding came from. It came from Molten Core and Onyxia, 2 incredibly bad instances. They advanced. Why? Because guys like Insidia, Fires of Heaven, and all of these old school guilds back in the day pushed and said, this is cool, now make me something that's gonna be hard. And they kept pushing, and we got TBC, and we got some examples, even in Wrath, of exceptional quality raid content. And you would never have gotten there if some people did not take World First seriously. The fact that Blizzard is now taking them seriously, that should be very heartening for the future of raiding to you, and that should say to you that raid content in Cataclysm has the very real possibility of being superb. My name is Total Biscuit, you are listening to Blue Please, here on CynicalBrits.com. I'm thinking Sabaton, I'm thinking something from their brand new album. Played it before, I will play it again, it's called Coat of Arms. I'll be right back after this to ask you a question. When is it okay to protest, and how, indeed, not to do it? Enjoy.